we are going to contrast the law of commandment with the law of love. And I'm going to do just the first three commandments today in Exodus chapter 20 that Dale read from. It says, God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the fathers to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Now, the questions that I've set up, because you didn't get them beforehand, I made them very simple, and are just going to draw on your basic Bible knowledge. But we might start out with a question of why we're even looking at the Ten Commandments at all. Romans 6:14 says we are not under law, but under grace. If that is so, are the Ten Commandments even relevant today? And if so, why? David? Very good, very good. The law shows us how far we fall short and why we need the grace. What else? Debbie? We were talking about expectations this morning in Sunday school. Very good. That's right. That's right. The only thing Jesus did away with was the ceremonial law, which is why we can have sausage sandwiches and eat ham, and we don't keep kosher food laws in Christianity. But the moral law still stands. That has never changed. Now, what is the primary purpose of the law? Oh, excellent. David looked at my notes. No, he really didn't. It's Romans 5:20. Moreover, the law entered that sin might abound, that the trespass might increase, the NIV says. But where sin abounded, grace abounded more. People think they get right with God by keeping the Ten Commandments, and we kind of grade on a curve, and if we do 7 out of 10, that's a passing grade of 70 in anybody's school, and that's not true. God says you got to get 100 on the test. We say, well, who can make 100 on the test? God says that's why you need the cross of Jesus Christ. But the law in the Old Testament never made us right with God. That's why they had the animal sacrifice system. In the New Testament, the Ten Commandments do not get us right with God. That's why we have the shed blood of Jesus Christ on the cross. But having said that, the moral law is just as valid as when it was given some 3,000 and more years ago to Moses, actually more like 3,500 years ago. Now, this is a question that's going to get more into the heart of the sermon. Why are some Christians tempted to evaluate their lives by what they don't do, by what they avoid, by the negative aspects of the law? Why is that so much easier to do than to say what we actually do? Oh, very good. Okay, we're called to obey. Yeah, that's for sure. Got almost 6 billion people not obeying God's laws and then wonder why we're in the mess we're in. That's no great rocket science. But there is a temptation to look at everything negatively. And the reason for this sermon is I was given a request, again anonymously, But one of the topics when we did topical things was to do something on the sin of omission. And that's really the reason for this sermon. I thought I'd take the 10 Commandments, which are concerned with sins of commission, what you're not supposed to be doing, and elaborate some on that, but then turn it around on its head and talk about the sin of omission, the things that we should be doing right that we just kind of blissfully forget about. And I'm going to contrast the law of commandment with the law of love. And the law of commandment tells us what not to do. The law of love tells us positively what we should be doing. And the law of love comes from Galatians 5:14. Paul says the entire law is summed up in one word: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. If you love your neighbor, you won't steal from him. If you love your neighbor, you won't lie to him. If you love your neighbor, you'll be happy at what they have. You won't covet and be all upset because they're further ahead along the line economically than you are. And most Bible-believing Christianity, unfortunately, is concerned with the law of commandment, what we are to avoid as Christians. I shared this a while ago, and I'm going to repeat it. Decades ago, and when I first came to Christ in the late 60s, we still had what were called the filthy five. That if you obeyed these 5 things, and it had nothing to do with the 10 Commandments, but if you obeyed these extra 5 things, you were really right with God. No smoking, no drinking, no dancing, no going to movies, no card playing. Well, cards, movies, and dancing have pretty much gone by the wayside for Christians, so we're down to the filthy 2. And you know, even these 2 aren't marks of spirituality. There are a lot of unbelievers out there who have stopped smoking or never took up smoking because it's an issue of health. It is a stupid thing to do. People say, oh, it's a dirty habit. No, it's not a dirty habit. It's a deadly habit. It's going to kill you. Drinking is an issue of conscience. There is no verse in the Bible that says thou shalt not have an alcoholic beverage. But the Bible tells us plenty of things of not putting a stumbling block in the way of someone else, of really loving somebody else. I came across statistically that 1 out of 6 Americans wrestles with the issue of alcoholism. So if you're out public having a drink and there are 6 people around the table with you, you have a better than even odds that one of those people has a problem with drinking. Do you remember a character, and this is reruns or on TV land, so you can even see it today, but Sanford and Sons, Aunt Esther. You remember Aunt Esther? And you heathen, that was her favorite word, and she always loved to use it in connection with Fred. And she was like the spiritual policeman. She was always looking to spray a Christian antiseptic on anything you were doing. Well, she's funny in a sitcom. She's sad in real life as a believer. They measure their Christianity by what they don't do, by what they avoid, by how much they distance themselves from the world. And we forget that Christ has called us out of the world to also send us back into the world to draw people out of the world to himself. And they measure themselves by teaspoons in their service. They love form over function. Every Bible-believing church should have a prayer meeting. That's what Bible-believing churches do. Of course, they don't ever go to one, but it's good to have one. Yeah, we should sing the old hymns and not the choruses, but when the hymns are sung, they sit there mum-faced. Bible studies are great, just don't ask me to attend one. And they are always the first to cast a stone, and they really keep their pitching arm in good shape. And, you know, Jesus talked about this spiritual myopia where they see specks in everybody else's eyes and can't seem to see the log or the beam in their own line of sight. So today we're going to take a tour of the first 3 commandments. We're going to look briefly at the law of command, what it is that we should avoid and rightly avoid, and then what we should be doing according to the law of love, so we don't just get a negative flavor for these commandments.